You are listening to The Four Corners, the official podcast of No Counters, No Combos. What is up, Squared Nation? Welcome back to the Four Corners podcast. Real quick, we have a kind of like a special edition upload this week. Normally we try to get these out for you guys on Thursday, but this will be going live Friday, June 28th, which is the first day of the ARG Invitational in Atlantic City. So hopefully if you guys are listening to this on your trip down, hopefully you have a safe drive, and hopefully, you know, we can make the drive a little less stressful for you with some entertainment. So without further ado, we do have a very special guest with us here. We have Marcus Kantarci, the infamous Marcus Kantarci, or the famous Marcus Kantarci from Shenron's Lair. What's up, man? How are you on the West Coast today?
Hey, what's up, Adrian? I'm doing good.
So the first thing I want to talk about is obviously Shenron's Lair and the actual website. I started my YouTube journey a little over a year ago, and I remember specifically reaching out to you guys because I noticed that you had a section or like a tab on your website for content creator, like a spotlight for content creators. So I figured on a whim, I just contact you guys. I had no idea that you were as down to earth as you guys are. And ever since then, we've kind of been, you know, you have featured No Counters, No Combos on your page, which I'm obviously more than thankful for. But I wanted to just kind of ask you, what led you to start Shenron's Lair, the website?
Well, coming into the Dragon Ball card game, you know, before release, I used to play Hearthstone quite a lot. And Hearthstone had websites that were kind of like Shenron's Lair, where it helps people enhance their game. You know, they would have deck lists, they would have videos and articles, and you know, just the overall kind of source for your Hearthstone needs. And you know, I had a computer science background. I just graduated college, and you know, I was getting into Dragon Ball. I thought, you know, why not make a website that would be beneficial for me, not only like professionally, but also on a personal level, at my hobby level, and you know, bring something I love to the table for the community. And originally, I tried to, you know, create a deck builder and stuff right off the bat before the release of the card game, but that proved to be a little difficult. So I started with just kind of being the news and content platform for the Dragon Ball card game and give people what they want. You know, whether it's reading deck profiles or watching deck profiles. And the more I saw people create YouTube channels for it, it kind of clicked to me that, hey, I should have like a section on the website where I just list all the content creators, so everybody can just go there and pick and choose who they want to see, and they could find everybody as well.
Well, that's you know, that's an amazing outlook on it, because you know, you are now bundled into the category of being, even though you might not consider it, you are a content creator for the Dragon Ball Super card game. I mean, there's different variations of content creation. You know, the YouTube is a very popular platform. Patreon is very popular. There's a couple podcasts. So there's many different ways of content creation. And you were one of the first people to kind of, you know, take that idea and run with it by giving us essentially an online database for research, you know, tools and ways of, you know, making deck lists virtually before actually investing in the actual cardboard. So, you know, it goes it goes without being said that that's definitely, you know, something that we as the players not so much maybe take for granted, but we don't realize how much of a help that is to us. I mean, I've been using Shenron's Lair since the beginning. It's the only online deck builder that I use. I mean, it's so easy. The interface is great. You guys update the cards as soon as they come out. It's been, I'm sure it didn't start like that, but it's been great ever since. But specifically the content creator spotlight, it's very what's the word I'm looking for? It shows your true colors, because it's kind of humbling that you would take a step back to say, okay, you know what? I built this website for the Dragon Ball Super card game, but instead of closing it off to the community, I'm going to open it up and I'm going to share with people, hey, if you're interested in this type of thing, you can go check it out here. So you're kind of like the port or like the hub for all of this traffic, and you're just kind of just pinging everything off. So that's really special.
Yeah.
I really do appreciate that.
And that's exactly, thank you for that. And that's exactly what I wanted to be, Another good website comparison is, if you're familiar with fighting games, is shoryuken.com. They were kind of a hub for fighting games where they just posted a bunch of different links to other different content creators. And that's exactly what I want to be for Dragon Ball as well, because at the end of the day, I just want the Dragon Ball card game to be as successful as it can be, and hopefully we grow the community, because the bigger the game is, it's a win-win situation for everybody involved, and the more fun us players will have as well. So I really hope Shenron's Lair can kind of guide or help get that goal easier.
I mean, you guys are definitely, starting on the right foot. I mean, it's definitely, a breath of fresh air, and you guys keep it updated, and there's been a new update, and the most impactful update, I think, was when you I guess you made kind of like that interface on the homepage of all like the recent YouTube uploads, so people can just go directly to click on the most recent video that was uploaded. That's been huge. I mean, obviously, for myself, but the other channels, Crossworld TCG and Android and the Eggman, like it kind of puts everybody out there, which is good, because, there are a lot of different content creators. And even though we are kind of making content about the same game, we don't all have the same ideas. So, seeing it from one perspective could be seeing it differently from a completely different perspective as well. So we definitely do appreciate that. I think I can speak for all of the content creators on YouTube and Patreon and all this other stuff that Shenron's Lair is definitely a tool that we use in our arsenal.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course, no problem. So the next thing I kind of wanted to segue into, you kind of started talking about your background as far as card games, and you started talking about Hearthstone. Now I know Hearthstone is primarily played on the computer. It's like an online virtual card game per se, right? But so now that you play Dragon Ball, do you prefer the online model, or do you prefer the in-person, like real life model?
Oh man, that's a little tough to answer, because they both have their pros and cons. Physical card games, it's probably like the funnest thing for me as a hobby. Just going and interacting with people and playing a physical game. It's a lot of fun, time well spent. But at the same time, it's a lot of time spent.
Right.
And it's a lot of effort spent as well, like driving to locals, driving to events, and flying to events. It's a lot of time and effort that's spent. So that part is the con to it, but the pros are also great, interacting with people. When it comes to online, it's just so accessible. That's why I really like online play. It doesn't matter where I'm at. It doesn't matter kind of what time it is. Like, I could just play it whenever I want, and that makes it so easy and so accessible. So I really do prefer playing online. Even the Dragon Ball card game, I played that online the most, with Octagon. And it's even gotten to the point where I just prefer to play online with my friends rather than, go to the card shop and play there, because it's so much more difficult for me to go to a card shop and the amount of time it takes playing at the card shop.
Right.
So I kind of do prefer online, but when it comes to big events, there's no match for that. Big events is the main attraction of it all.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're talking about, events on a larger scale, I think obviously, you look forward to playing for multiple rounds and you look forward to the competition. But from what it sounds like, just being in the environment with all of the other players and saying what's up to the guys, so to speak, is much more valuable than actually sitting down and playing for 8 hours. That's how I think.
Absolutely.
I mean, we have the ARG Invitational coming up this weekend here in Atlantic City, which I will be attending with my team as well. And I'm looking forward to playing in the event. I'm not going to lie. I'm looking forward to, me individually and us also as a team trying to make a name for ourselves and putting, us out there. But I'm honestly just looking forward to meeting everybody because this is only the second large event that I'm going to, and the first large event that I went to, I didn't really know too many people. But now that I know more people in the community, and I guess I've become more successful with content creation and gotten my name out there a little more. Obviously, with the help of Shenron's Lair as well, I'm looking forward to meeting more and more people. So me personally, that's where I kind of make the separation. Now, as far as online games are concerned, I can definitely see where the value comes from it. Especially when you start mixing your personal life in and you have to devote time to a hobby. I can definitely see the value in being able to just pick up and play whenever you want. I mean, I know you're a busy man. I'm a busy man. I have a family. I have 3 kids. So yeah, it would be lovely to just plop down and play whenever I wanted. Do you think that, for card games to be successful moving forward into the future, that they would kind of have to be like a hybrid of both, like have the physical card game, but it could also be translated into like a digital card game as well, just so you can have like both, like the best of both worlds, so to speak?
Right. I 100% believe in that model. I see, Hearthstone doesn't have a physical card game and it's purely an online one, but maybe it's because of the Blizzard background, but it's very successful. You would consider that as a highly successful card game. Then you look at Magic Arena recently, and Magic's been in the physical card game industry for 20, 25 years, maybe more.
30 years, yeah.
And now they're going into the digital platform as well. Then you see new games as well, like I believe Lightseekers was a moderately, new game. I don't think it was as successful as people thought it would be, but it came out with both a physical and an online card game. So I think the industry is going that route. And the challenge is balancing it because you do not want people to play online only and not buy product. That's the downside to it. But I think you can balance it, giving in-store promotions and incentives to come out to locals, kind of like our sealed Power Booster events we've been having recently. If you kind of support the local scene and give incentives for people to go to the local card shop, they'll play both. They'll do both. And I feel like it's just a win-win scenario. I don't see how an online client will not help any card game because just having people play it and be obsessed with your game just means they're going to be more likely to buy something in the future for it.
That's very true. That's very true. Now, you did mention just briefly, going to a local shop and playing out. Because you're of the mindset that you prefer the online format, I think this is a perfect question for me to ask you. What is your opinion on the importance of the local card shop and the director? Like, what's the importance of like locals? Like, how important do you think it is to attend locals, especially in the long run of wanting to grow the game? Like, basically, do you think if people stopped attending locals but continued to play on Octagon or Untap, that the game would continue to grow, or do you think it would lose interest on a local level?
If there was no official online client, like there's as it is now, if there's no Dragon Ball client, and then if people stop going to locals, yes, I believe the game would kind of die down. I don't think it would grow at all. So as of now, I feel like locals growing is the main driver for the game to grow. So I don't see it growing without locals. But if you had an online client and that was official, then you could possibly draw in new players through that online client. People are going to see it in the app store, they're going to see their friends play it, and just random people will download the game without ever stepping inside a store.
Right.
And then once they download the game and play it, and then they find out, oh, there's, local tournaments I could go to, or there's, events I could go to, and I gotta buy these cards physically, like, then that might serve as a way of attracting them to get into the game.
Right, right. I mean, I don't think that it's that far-fetched for it to happen. I mean, the tutorial game that was released, a few years ago when the game first came out, it had a pretty solid, flow of gameplay. Like, the mechanics were there, it seemed pretty simple. So I don't think they're too far away from making an official online client. I don't know why they're hesitating to do it. But I think, like, I agree with you. I think that if they could make that online client, you're going to attract more people because, everybody's on the internet nowadays. Everybody's playing mobile games. All of these auto chess games are super popular. So
Right.
what's stopping somebody from scrolling through the App Store and getting a recommendation of playing Dragon Ball Super? So I think you hit the nail right on the head. I think the online client could be like the gateway into the game, and then that interest peaks, and now you start playing the physical card game. I think they might be dropping the ball a little bit in that aspect.
Right.
So I definitely agree with what you're saying.
For example, Pokemon has an online client, correct? And I haven't played Pokemon physically, since I was a kid. And even when I was a kid, I barely played it. But I got into the online client, and I have a lot of fun with it. It's actually a really fun card game. But I've never played it physically still, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm very close to possibly getting into it because I play it every night before I go to bed. I'll just play a couple quick games, and it's just so much fun that I tell myself, oh man, maybe I should get into Pokemon. But just having those thoughts, if I have those thoughts, that means that if a Dragon Ball card game client was out there, there would be other people like me where they probably never played the game, but they will try the online game and then eventually, maybe have those thoughts of, oh, this is so much fun. Maybe I should buy the card games and start going out to stores,
Right. I mean, it definitely gets addicting in the beginning, when you first crack open your first couple of packs and you start seeing characters that you grew up with, and you're like, oh, the artwork is pretty nice. The game seems fairly simple to play, and the mechanics are pretty good. And then that can kind of blossom into more of an understanding of the game. So, real quick, if you can remember your first experience with the Dragon Ball Super card game. Like, what kind of, because you had said that you were playing Hearthstone and then you made the transition. So what kind of piqued your interest for Dragon Ball Super for you to make that jump over?
Well, I randomly saw a Facebook ad for it, and at the time I was playing Hearthstone, and I was kind of missing the whole, going to locals and the physical interaction. I really was missing that. And I used to play the Naruto card game and Yu-Gi-Oh, prior to playing Hearthstone. Like, I want to say maybe about 10 years ago I played Yu-Gi-Oh.
Okay.
So I kind of grew up with the whole card game scene as a kid. I was a TCG kid. So when I saw the Dragon Ball card game, I was like, maybe this is a good time to get back into card games, because I remembered having so much fun with it as a kid, and now that I'm older, cards are more accessible to me, and I was playing a card game to begin with online, so everything just kind of lined up, and it was a perfect time to get into it. And I joined the Facebook group, and then from there, just waited for the game to be released and got into it right away.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, it's really nice to kind of see. I look back and I see where everybody started and now where everybody is now. Like, I remember when I first started getting interested in the Dragon Ball Super card game, Kitchen Table Meta was one of the first YouTube channels I came across, and then I know that they did the discussion group, on Facebook, and it was very small in the beginning, and now it's like over 15,000 members or some crazy number. Like, it's kind of insane how in such a short amount of time you can generate that type of positivity, because the game is going on its 3rd-year anniversary. Like, it's only been out for 3 years, coming July, I think. So it's still fairly new, and we're 7 sets in. So it's pretty impressive to see how important the driving force of the community and the player base completely just lends itself to growing the game. So I think that's really good. And for everybody who's listening to this podcast, you should kind of pat yourself on the back a little bit, because, I say it all the time, and I probably sound like a broken record. Games live and die with their player base. If the player base is excited and positive about it, then it's going to continue to grow. But the minute people start, scaling back, it starts to die off a little bit. So, how often do you actually go to your local to play Dragon Ball?
So when the game first came out, almost 3 years ago, we had 2 locals every week. It was Mondays and Saturdays, I believe. And I used to go to both of them, like, religiously. I would go there every day, every time they had events. And I kept that up for a very long time. And I want to say, since this past Nationals, I think I've been going a lot less, as in maybe once a month, maybe once every 2 months. It kind of died down a lot for me, to the point where I just went to the sealed event for the World Martial Arts Boosters yesterday, actually. And when I went there, it was a really nice experience. That a lot of players that I've seen throughout the years, they were like, "Oh my God, it's Marcus! Welcome back! Like, we haven't seen you in so long," and stuff. Yeah. So, yeah, my local attendance has definitely gone down. It's not as high as it used to be.
Is there any specific reason as to why that is, or just like you're just too busy with everything else?
Yeah, it's a combination of stuff. So definitely time restraints. I used to be a big fan of best of 3 for locals, and you play 3 rounds, but that takes about 3.5, 4 hours.
Yeah,
so if your locals start at 5, by the time you're done, it's 9 p.m. That's kind of my whole day right after work, because I get off at 5. And so the time it takes was a big turnoff for me. So I kind of really like best of 1 scenarios now, where I could go to a tournament, play 4 rounds, but it's only 2 hours, best of 1.
Right.
So I'm a big advocate for it. One of our locals is doing it, which is great. And a lot of people like it. But even then, I think the biggest drawback for me was, just the time / benefit you get out of it too, where back in, all the way up to, I want to say, set 4 maybe, going to locals meant you were getting tournament packs, you were getting tournament kits, and there was lots of good value out of it. So even though you would spend 4 or 5 hours at these events, you felt pretty rewarded for going there.
Right.
Nowadays, when I go there, if I spend 3 or 4 hours there, besides the playing, I don't really feel like I'm getting rewarded. So I would tell myself that instead of going 4 hours to locals, I could stay home and play Octagon for 3 or 4 hours at my own leisure, how I want, and it's a lot more comfortable that way. So because of that, my local attendance has gone down big time.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of ran into the same issue a little bit here at one of our local stores. Every Tuesday, we have a store in northern New Jersey called Level 1 Games, where when we, and by we, I mean like some of the members of my team, when we started going there, it was very low key. It was very small, 6 to 8 people, nothing crazy. So we managed to do best of 3 for 3 rounds, but the tournaments would start at 7, and we wouldn't get done till like 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And that was okay. It was okay for a little bit, but then, I started kind of name dropping level 1 games a lot, whether it would be on Facebook or on YouTube, and just word of mouth, and talking to my locals in Newark, which is another store that we go to, and just kind of spreading the word, because there was a lot of players that were looking for different locations because they were unaware that multiple stores. So long story short, word of mouth got around, and the locals started to steadily increase from like 6 to 8 to like 10 to 12 to like 12 to 14 to like over 16. This past Tuesday we had a local. There was 32 people there, and for a local.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a good amount of people. So we started running into these same kind of issues where we were getting 20 people and still trying to do best of 3. And after 3 rounds, you would have like 4 undefeated players, and you couldn't really, separate the top cut. So we decided as a player base together with the tournament organizer, David, who's one of my teammates, and just the player base in general, we started transitioning to best of 1s. So now we just do best of 1s, and we're still getting, 20 to 30 people on a weekly basis, which is great. But best of 1 is a completely different format than best of 3. But that's a discussion for another day. But I think on a local level, I think it's okay to have best of 1s.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with that too. You go to locals to have fun, to practice new ideas, and it's not like you're competing for thousands of dollars or anything.
Right.
So best of 1, I feel like is perfect for locals. And then for the big regional tournaments, best of 3 is, standard.
Yep.
So yeah, that makes sense to me.
So when you guys started your Shenron's Lair, with every intention of it being, a tool for the community to use and for the game to grow, to where you've gotten now, where you actually have an actual pro team. Did you ever think that would ever happen, like getting an actual pro team to represent Shenron's Lair?
I actually did not think that would ever happen. I had no intentions of that happening at all. But, as I met people in the community, they would always, tell me, you should start a Shenron's Lair team. Let's all get together and create a Shenron's Lair team. So and I always shot it down in the beginning, they were just my local friends that would say that. Mm-hmm. But then I met some more people online, and they were saying the same thing to me, like, we should really create a team. And so as the website got a little bit more popular, my local store also offered us to, make jerseys and stuff and, represent the first regionals ever. So I was like, okay, I guess we could do this. We could make a Shenron's Lair team. And so we just started with a bunch of local guys and friends and made some jerseys and just really played with jerseys on. Nothing really crazy or anything, At the end of the day, we're still just players. We're still just friends. But yeah, so we kind of kicked it off like that, and we had success, obviously. We had players, top. So, little by little, we grew and got better and better results. And next thing you know, I was like, okay, maybe we should focus on the competitive team a little bit more and kind of use that to engage with the community a bit more. So, it eventually grew to what it is today.
Yeah, and I think that it's very important for I don't want to say this how do I say this without sounding boisterous? It's very important for people to have something to look up to or to strive to get to, right? Mm-hmm. So, if you're a player in this game and you're looking at, the juggernauts in the community or the big names or it's nice to have, the Shenron's Lairs and the kitchen table metas, and the PPGs. It's nice to have stuff to aspire to, because when it comes to that, you guys are at the top of the mountain, that's where it ends. That's where you get to the top. And then we're all here at the bottom looking up saying, okay, I need to reach for the brass ring and I need to chase it down and get to it. And that creates ambition, that creates drive, that creates that competitive nature that, some people might lack nowadays because everything is so just here's a medal for participating. There's not really you gotta play hard and win. You gotta earn it. So it's nice to have, those pillars in the community to look up to, and your outreach has, because I know you guys are primarily based out of the West Coast, but your outreach has actually come over here to the East Coast, and you've been able to add, members on the East Coast, that are valuable. If I'm not mistaken, Joey Palladino and Pat O'Neill, the first 2 names that come to my head, are a part of your team, and those guys are great players, but they also have great minds for the game, which is very important as well. So, definitely, I give you kudos on that. Being able to spot that talent there.
Thanks.
But speaking of your team and events specifically, how do you feel about the lack of or the abundance of events when it comes to East Coast and West Coast? Because I know that's like a big topic now.
Yeah, it's really disappointing for us West Coast people, because I know there's a huge player base in the West Coast. I mean, you look at all the regionals that were hosted on the West Coast, especially in California, and I think every major California event so far had over 480 players. I think there's been 3 events so far. There was the ARG San Jose, the Core TCG Regional in LA. Both of those had over 500. I want to say it was like 505 and 510. And then the Core TCG Celebrations in San Diego, which had 480 players.
Wow.
So, and those are some huge numbers that I don't think I've really seen elsewhere. I think Chicago Regionals was the closest one at 400 something as well.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so I know the player base exists. I know the numbers are there, but for some reason, we just can't get much West Coast events. We get Vegas every so often, and California especially, it's pretty much once or twice a year. That's it. And then you look at some of these, East Coast cities, like Florida has an event like almost every month.
That is very true. Florida always has events.
Right, and then there's something happening in Connecticut also, like every 3 months or something, but. Yeah, East Coast definitely gets a lot more events, and sadly, it's tough for West Coast players to also travel because of it's the distance. At least East Coast, there's a lot of states that are really close to each other, so a lot of the population is concentrated, and you get to see the same players consistently show up to all these tournaments, which is great for them. I mean, I would love to be in that scenario too, though.
Now, do you feel like that has directly to do with, the tournament organizers being essentially based out of the East Coast? Like I know PPG is obviously based in Florida. I'm not sure if ARG is on the East Coast or in the Midwest. For some reason, I think they're in Ohio somewhere, but that's still closer to the East Coast, than it is to the West Coast. Do you think it just has specifically to do with that, like where they're located?
I think it plays a part in it for sure. I know from their perspective, they need to pick a location that doesn't cost them as much money to rent out.
Right.
So they could, give us good pricing and stuff. And places in California, unfortunately, are very expensive. So I understand, their troubles for that. But I also think there are places in California that are not as expensive to host an event at. Places like in the middle of California, such as, Fresno, Bakersfield. Like these are kind of low-key cities that aren't as industrialized as like San Francisco or Los Angeles. So if you want to rent out a convention center, I don't think they cost nowhere near the cost that a convention center in Los Angeles would cost. So I think there's definitely a market and a place to do some research on and possibly try to host the event in. But yeah, California is just such a big state that the player base will deliver. Like they will drive from whether it's San Francisco or Los Angeles, San Diego, whatever city you pick, people are going to go to that event because it's kind of like so if they host a event more often, and by more often, I mean like more than once every 6 months, because that's basically what we get. So like even once every 3 months would be a really big upgrade. And I think a lot of the West Coast players would like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be really good for the game too, especially just for the sheer mass and location that you guys have on the West Coast and just the raw numbers that you get when it comes to the player base. Super players are based out of the West Coast. They're a huge channel with a huge following. I mean, people make the argument that they're more casual than they are competitive, but Tony and Christian, they do well when they go to their events. So, it's nice to have representation, but it would be nicer to have a better split when it came to, East versus West, as far as, the amount of events that you guys get on a yearly basis. Have you ever thought about maybe doing an event hosted by Shenron's Lair in the West Coast?
I have. I have thought about that, actually, and more so recently, too, because of the lack of events on the West Coast. One time we hosted a super release way back in set 2, when super releases were a really big deal and hundreds of players would show up to them. Shenron's Lair hosted one, and we got like about 60, 70 people, which
Okay.
is
That's pretty
high.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we had like a stream going on. We brought in like pizza for everybody. Like it was a good day. It was very challenging and very tough to run. We were definitely not organized nor professional as ARG PPG, right? We were just players just trying to host a tournament, really.
Right.
But that was a really good learning experience for us, and I think traveling to all these events and being a part of these events for so long now, I think Shenron's Lair could possibly host an event that will be acceptable to the community, and who knows, maybe we'll host some West Coast events.
That would be awesome, and I hope it's something that I would be able to attend, because that would just be amazing. But that I think that having the ability to want something done but doing nothing about it is where it gets tricky. You guys have the ability to not only do something, but want to do something, but then do something about it, which obviously goes without saying. If tomorrow you were to post something on Facebook about Shenron's Lair hosting a tournament on the West Coast, you would probably get 600-700 people. Just because, the size of the West Coast, you already know the player base that you have over there, you already know the attendance that they've had at previous events, but, Shenron's Lair is a much bigger name when it comes to Dragon Ball Super, is a much bigger name than Core TCG. I mean, I've known about Core TCG for years because I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's where I bought all my Yu-Gi-Oh! Product, through Core TCG. But when I started playing Dragon Ball, I had no idea that Core TCG was the West Coast tournament organizer. I literally had no idea until they held their first event. So if you attach your name, Shenron's Lair, to now being the tournament organizer for an event in the West Coast, you're gonna blow the roof off of the building for sure. So I would definitely love to see that.
Yeah, and that that's a good point you brought up, and it's also a disappointing point because Core TCG is such a big company, right? Like they've been in this business for a while. They know absolutely what they're doing, and they put on good events too. I really enjoy those guys, all the tournament organizers, and the people who run Core TCG. They're all really great guys. I really wish they were a bit more involved. I feel like they just kind of take the back seat and they just kind of do what they're given. I really wish that they made a little bit more of a push and hosted a little bit more events, because like I said, they know what they're doing. They're great guys. They have all the tools necessary to do it. So yeah, I feel like if they just had a little bit more drive, it would help us all.
Hopefully, it happens in the near future. I mean, like you said, they know what they're doing. They've been in the game for a while. They've experienced it. But sometimes you just got to take the bull by the horns and run with it. And it doesn't seem like... I mean, and I know nothing about them, and I'm not trying to, bash anybody. But when you look at the most well-known tournament organizers in the game, which I think it's safe to say right now it's PPG and ARG, those guys go and get it. Like, ARG is, always doing stuff, with the side events, and now they're doing the whole Argent Saga thing. Like, obviously it's a different game, but it's another layer that they can add to it. And PPG, with just the sheer popularity of it and their pro team and the storefront, they just kind of go after it. Because I remember when... Yeah. I remember
both those stores are a really good example of that, where they're not really required to do all these events. They do their Bandai stuff, they take care of that, and then in addition, they just host many more events,
Right.
and they're just really trying.
Right. They're, like you said, they're doing more than the bare minimum. They're doing more than what's expected of them by Bandai. They're actually putting on their own events. And I remember it wasn't even a year ago when PPG announced the Pro Play Tour. Like, they just came out of nowhere. Oh, here's another tournament organizer that's coming up here. I mean, unfortunately, yeah, it's on the East Coast again, but here's another. And it always seemed to kind of mirror what ARG was doing. ARG would be doing one week, and then the next week you'd have a PPG event, and then another ARG event, and it would just kind of bounce back and forth, giving the community a lot of options, which is good. You give them options to go and choose what events they want to play at, because obviously, in a perfect world, we want to go to every single event, but you can't, because there's other things that happen, in life, and you just can't probably afford to go to all these events. But it's nice to have options, and I wish it feels like a sin, not giving the same opportunity to probably a bigger sized player base on the West Coast, than we get here on the East Coast. It's just unfortunate, but hopefully, with the growth and the popularity of the game, just positively increasing by every time we get a new set. It seems like there's more and more people that are coming out of the woodwork to play the game. Hopefully you guys can get to that point, maybe team up with Core TCG and do an event, or do more consistent events. It'd be interesting to see, because I feel like Core TCG might have their hands full, and they're looking for like another big name to step up and kind of help them out with the organization of events. Maybe it's Shenron's Lair, who knows.
Yeah, we'll see.
So talking about events, did you guys, or you specifically, were you able to get your invites for the preliminaries to attend the regionals?
I believe most of the team did. I sadly did not get my invite to regionals. We only had 2 pre-elims hosted at our local area, and both of them were, I think, on the same day, or like one Saturday after another. Mm-hmm. And I was actually out of town for Origins tournament. So I missed both my local pre-elims, and I couldn't attend, so I didn't get a regional invite. So I don't have it, but I believe most of the other guys do. And I talked to Bandai about the whole regional invite thing. If people have a nationals invite, qualify to go to the regional invite only tournament. And when I talked to Bandai, they said yes, they do. And I told them that on Facebook, that's not what you guys said. So they said they would change it, but they haven't done anything yet. So I'm a little worried now.
Right.
But I mean, if it doesn't happen, it's all right. I'll still play at the open event, and we'll just have a good time.
Yeah, because to my knowledge, you have to get the prelim invite gets you into a regional, and then the regional invite gets you into nationals. That's how I understand it.
Correct.
So
it's just I won the Chicago celebration. I mean, the San Diego celebrations, and because I won that event, I automatically qualified for nationals. So I already have my national invite, but I don't have a regional invite, which kind of seems a little weird that you would have an invite to the highest level event, but not the one prior.
Right.
So that's why
I see what you're saying.
That's why I asked Bandai about that, and when we were at Origins, they said, "Oh yeah, that's a mistake. You should definitely be able to play at the main event for the regional. We'll change it." But like I said, they haven't changed it yet. So now, with regionals coming up in 2 weeks, hopefully they make the announcement soon. Or I don't know if I'll be able to play in a invite-only regional. Yeah,
I think the regional that's coming up the soonest would be the Richmond regional, correct?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. I was able to, luckily, I was able to get my invite for the prelim, but I didn't know that I didn't know that the prelim invites were tied to specific seasons. So there's like season 1 and season 2.
Yeah.
Which is weird, because it's like, okay, I earned this preliminary invite, and now I have to go to one of these 3 events, but they're all within the same month to 2-month span, and then there's a break in between, and then there's another prelim, and then another regional. So it's like, why? Yeah. So basically, long story short, I'm probably not going to be able to attend the Richmond regional. That is the closest regional to my location. I'm probably not going to be able to attend that regional, so I'll have to win another prelim in August to hopefully try to get to the regional in September, because in September there's a regional in Orlando, which is close to me as well. But I have to see how everything works out. You know, it is hard. It is hard to go to major events. For me specifically, that's kind of why I decided to put a team together, because I felt like, you know what, I feel like I'm doing a disservice to the community by being a content creator but not attending these major events. So there's like really no influence there. So I felt like, you know what, if I put a team together and these guys actually go to events and they do well, then, you know, that all circulates back to, you know, our channel here at No Counters, No Combo, so we can have a better positive impact on the community. Because otherwise, I'm just a guy behind a camera just talking about what I know on a local level, you know? So it's kind of rough, but obviously I would never prioritize Dragon Ball over my work or my family. So that's just where I draw the line. So you did mention the Nats situation. As far as the invites were concerned. So you have your invite for that. Looking at the meta and how it's kind of, I guess you can say, balanced out post Super Shenron ban, or I guess post Child's Wish ban. How do you feel about the current meta right now, like where it's at as far as the competitiveness and the variety?
I love it. I mean, the variety is definitely there. You know, if we were to look at this from a, you know, bird's eye view, like when we say variety, we're thinking like 3-4 competitive decks. Like, do you think that's good variety, or are we talking like 10?
For me, variety is more than 2, honestly.
Right, exactly. So I feel like, you know, there's a lot of competitive decks out there. You know, you have your big 3 decks, right? Like with the Brawly, Haida Mastery, Janemba, Kid Goku. Those are kind of like the big 3 right now. Or even if you add Green Brawly to the mix, that's like the big 4. But there's also a lot of kind of tier 2-ish decks that can definitely compete with those, and you know, possibly sneak their way into top cut and maybe even sneak their way to a win. You know, I tried a Hirudegarn Chain Zeno deck at Origins, and I feel like it's really strong. I would play it again because I really think it's a strong deck. So there's a lot of different decks and different strategies. I think the game is really well balanced in that sense. And I when I was at Origins, I did talk to the developers about this as well, where I said, you know, do you guys expect 10 leaders to be in the meta where everything is super balanced and competitive, or, you know, just 4 or 5 decks? And they were like, yeah, just 4 or 5 decks. That's kind of what we want. So they want 4 or 5 decks to be competitive, and then a lot more, you know, casual decks that people like to play with. And I think the game is great the way it is right now. I think it's very balanced. I think Super Shenron was a huge problem, and as soon as that went away, it just opened up the doors for, you know, a lot more balanced play. And now I think Atlantic City is going to be very interesting, because with the anniversary box set coming out, you know, that's a huge card pool that just got added. So we might see some crazy decks that come out, or we might see like a big buff to an existing one, or a completely different strategy to an existing deck. And yeah, we're gonna see what happens. I'm really excited for it.
You know, how do you feel about, because I know at some point you did play the Super Shenron. I think everybody did, especially when it comes to being competitive. You play Super Shenron at some point just to see how busted the deck really is. So now that the deck essentially no longer exists, what are your thoughts about Victory Strike, but more like more along the lines of what do you feel about just the whole chain? You know, path into height into victory strike.
Yeah. So I do like Victory Strike. I like the idea that, from any one moment with one big attack, you could win the game. It's an exciting thing, and I like it a lot. But I don't know if I like how you get there.
Right. It just feels too easy.
Yeah, especially like even if Path of Greatness Goku brings out Haida Mastery and you go into Victory Strike, like even if it's on 4, I feel like that's great. But the fact that Haida Mastery just taps out all of your opponent's energy, and you have no room to counterplay at all because you have no energy, you can't negate the attack. You're just put in a really bad spot, and I don't know if I like that. I think it would be a lot more fun if it did go off on 4, but you had all your energy open, and so now it's just pure combo power. All right, who has more combo power? We're all in on a Hail Mary type of play.
Right.
I think that would make it a lot more fun too. So I think Haida Mastery is probably the card that I don't really like because it just taps out all your energy and you can't really do anything about it.
Yeah, I mean we have here, obviously we have our players that play the deck, and I feel comfortable against the not 100% comfortable, like it's an uncomfortable matchup, but I feel more comfortable against that deck because I've played it a lot, so I kind of know what they're trying to do and trying to get to and trying to curve out on 4. But I think my problem with it is it's not so much path into height into victory strike. I think my problem with it is just everything that goes into that deck. Like the Roshi Shen draw engine is really good.
Yeah.
And then having that Goten combo for 15k just to save them and making them 21 is just ridiculous. And then path coming down, having 19k barrier, tapping a creature and drawing a card. It seems just way too overtuned. It does too much for 3 energy. And then the Broly leader, Broly being able to self-awaken. It's an untapped 2 leader. It can rest a creature on your opponent's board, and so you can swing over it if there's like a blocker or something. And then of course, the access to Cold Bloodlust and Battering Laser. I think all of that, in combination with the fact that they can just go up the chain from path to height to victory strike, I think that's what kind of drives me a little nuts. Like they just have access to all of the best cards in the game. Like that deck is just literally take all the best cards and put them with this leader, and here you go.
Yeah, so and that's why it's a tier 1 deck, right? Like it has all the answers. It flows really well, and it just does its job. Like turn 4, you just win basically.
Yeah, you just basically win turn 4, and like I the problem that I have with it is like there's really not a lot that you can do against it.
Right.
Like you have to. There's only there's literally only maybe 3 cards in the game that can affect that strategy, but you need energy to play cards. So if you go into that turn with 3 energy open, you lose because you're getting tapped out. So it's like, okay, well then let me play a completely different strategy and not tap my energy going into turn 4. They always find a way around it. So I don't know. Yeah. It's kind of rough, but
that's the tough part.
It is what it is at this point. I'm not gonna cry over spilt milk. It hasn't been addressed. Hopefully, I think if Bandai was to address something and get rid of a card, I think it's safe to say just get rid of Path, because Path is what opens everything up. I mean, you can make the argument that, if you ban Path, the deck dies. In a way, it does, but then again, it doesn't, because you can just play Goku Jr., who literally has the same effect of Path to Greatness, except you have to be at 2 life and you have to have a lineage leader. So if you really want to play that, Goku Jr. into height, into Victory Strike, then you just play it with the lineage leader. It's still possible. But I think Path just does too much for its curve. I think it's just too good.
Right. And if you ban Path, I think Universe 7 Frieza would be the go-to Victory Strike deck.
But that's a little more fair, I think.
And exactly. Like, they play Objection to get to do their whole combo on 4 turns. And when they do their combo, it's a lot more fair because they're spending a lot of resources to get to that spot. They can't attack with Victory Strike twice, so it's a lot harder. They can't go, when they swing in with Victory Strike, they can't get to 100k combo power as easily as Brawly can.
Right, and they're probably, if you get rid of Path, they're probably not going into the height combo. They're probably going into that original 5-drop Goku that goes into the 8-drop that goes into the Victory Strike.
Right.
So they're probably doing that, which is a lot more fair because at least height won't come out and tap down your energy. But also that Frieza leader doesn't have access to Cold Bloodlust, which is another huge card. So yeah, I mean, I think I don't really think Victory Strike is the problem because yes, even though it's one of those cards that you can't interact with its effect, like you can't negate its effect, there's a lot of cards that get around it, especially now in the game. Like we have one of our players here in our local meta that plays a Bojack, and Malicious Farewell is literally a 1-card answer to Victory Strike. So there are cards that exist to get rid of Victory Strike, but you have to have energy to play those cards. So that's where the difficulty lies. So we've been talking for about an hour, and it's really late here on the East Coast. I'm sure it's not that late on the West Coast, but I just really quick, I want to say thank you for coming on with us and having a really nice conversation, about the Dragon Ball Super card game. And, I wish you guys the best of luck at Shenron's Lair. I thank you guys for all the support. Allowing me to be featured on your website is really huge. So I want to say thank you from all of us here at No Counters, No Combos. We really do appreciate all the support, and we wish you guys the best in the future. If there's any other time you ever want to come on just to have a conversation, you're more than welcome. The door's always open. But before we get out, I do have to ask you have any shout-outs you want to give real quick before we get on out of here?
Shout out to No Counters, No Combos. Thank you for having me here. I really enjoyed the podcast here today. Shout out to Team Shenron's Lair. They're going to compete at Atlantic City this weekend. Hopefully, we could take it or have a good showing.
I'm sure you will.
And then, shout outs to the website, shenronslair.com, if you want to go check out a bunch of content creators like No Counters, No Combos, and, build decks and view deck lists. You could use the website. Every tool we have on there is to make your experience better playing the game. So, that's about it. And hopefully, the Dragon Ball card game keeps going as strong as it does, and we're here for many more years.
Well, as long as we have people like you in the community and Shenron's Lair, I think we're going to move in the right direction. So, again, thank you for your time. I really do appreciate it. For those of you listening, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Four Corners podcast. We are heading to Atlantic City this weekend for the ARG Invitational, so I'll try to keep you guys as updated as I possibly can, but it is going to be a little difficult, me running wild at the events there. So just stay tuned. I might have some stuff uploaded on YouTube just to kind of track and follow what's going on at the event, but hopefully we have a good showing, and we really do appreciate all the support. In the meantime, I wish you guys well, and we'll talk to you next week. Be there or be squared.